What's up, everybody? We're back.
Yeah! Hey, welcome back to the Metalhead's Journey. Hey, so hopefully you've been following along with us here. We're going through 4 separate lists at the same time, so I know it can be a little bit confusing. This week we are moving on to the top 5 of the big 4 of prog metal bands. This is Fate's Warning. This is their 5th album that's on the list. This is A Pleasant Shade of Gray. We're going to do a quick history of the band here real quick, and then we'll hop right into the review. So Fates Warning, formed in 1982, is an American prog metal band from Hartford, Connecticut. They are often referred to as pioneers of the prog metal movement and have been referred to as one of the big 4 of prog metal. How about that? Guitarist Jim Matheos is the only constant member of the band, though current vocalist Ray Alder did join the group in 1987. And as far as I know, he's still in the band. The band has released 13 studio albums, including Long Day, Good Night, released in 2020. They have sold over how many records, do you think?
They're not nearly as famous as they deserve. But so I'm gonna lowball it at like I'm gonna say 2 to 3 mil.
I
was gonna say 5 million.
I said 6.
They sold over 1 million records worldwide.
Wow.
A Pleasant Shade of Gray. What is that? Gray, released in 1997, is the band's 8th studio album. It's a concept album that contains one song divided into 12 parts and is noted for its darker mood and more progressive style. The lineup for the album features Ray Alder on vocals, right, Dave? He's on that album? Okay. Jim Matheos on guitar, Mark Zonder on drums, Joey Vera on bass, and Kevin Moore, who's formerly of Dream Theater, on keyboards. All of the music for the album was written by Jim Matheos. There were no singles, and surprisingly, this album did not chart on the Billboard charts.
What?
I only say surprisingly halfway in jest, okay? But they did have 3 other albums that have charted on Billboard before, that came out before this one. So, yeah. They, when they said that this one was a little bit darker, they had released 2 albums before this that they felt like sounded very similar to each other, and so they really tried to take a little bit more of a right turn and write something that was completely different. So I think that's how you ended up with this concept here. So it was actually a surprise that it didn't chart. But also, if you've heard the record, not a surprise. If you know what I'm saying. Dave, why don't you get us started, man?
So I would say, I can't say this definitively for Jonah, but I think I can comfortably say I am the most prog, leaning guy in terms of what I listen to and what I enjoy. And so I was really excited to get into this one. And for me, it did not disappoint. I do enjoy really long songs, and I know that functionally that's what we have here. It's 53 minutes, and it is broken up into parts, but from my understanding, that is merely a a concession that the band made in regards to the studio that they were working for at the time. Not necessarily artistically, it's one song, right? And I think it flows really well. I enjoy it. I think this is for these guys, it must be like a little bit of a nightmare, although I'm curious to see how you feel. I normally listen to albums from start to finish generally. So for me, this wasn't difficult at all, and I really, really enjoyed a lot of this record. So I'm happy with it.
I'll answer from the other side. So, Dave said he leans more progressive. Like, I often refer to myself as a booger-eating moron on the show here because I just like something that's a little bit more straightforward metal. For me, I think this album has a lot of good musical highlights on it. There is some good guitar work on it. I think the vocals really, for me, are the standout. Like, if this album didn't have the vocal melodies that it has, this album would be much lower on my score. For me, I felt like this album was just a little flat. It's not about it being a prog metal record that was adverse for me, but it was like Symphony X. I gave that a great score, and I've given Dream Theater like some other praise. So it's not that it was progressive, but I think it may be. I don't know if it's the direction they took on the album, it being darker, and so production wise, it's a little bit different. But there's just I'm trying to sugarcoat it. It's boring. The record itself is boring. That doesn't mean it's not good, right? Like there's a lot. Again, there's good musical moments on it, but I just find myself getting bored somewhere in the middle of it often, and I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on it because I'm going to give it like a pretty decent score because I know there's good stuff on it here, and there's some moments that are really good, but it's just flat for me a little bit. I don't know. Jonah, what do you think?
So I think I'm going to fall somewhere in the middle, obviously, between you and Dave and Josh. I didn't get bored, and I actually made a note of that specifically because I was a little bit surprised that I didn't. Near the end, because when I was listening to it, I was only listening to it from start to finish. So near the end, there's a point in like transitioning from part 11 to 12 where I did kind of my interest in wane a little bit, but I'm surprised I didn't get bored throughout the entire album because I thought I would. And I do appreciate proggy elements and stuff like that, and because this is a very it leans really hard into the fact that it's a concept album. I tried to keep a bit more of an open mind about it as well. Even though it is all one singular piece of music, I do still kind of view each of the tracks as separate tracks to an extent, at least. And none of them were like super long, and the ones that are longer, I felt were good, with the exception of one.
Yeah.
And my only real, I guess, criticisms were there were a few moments where it seemed like they were just trying to get exposition out almost, where musically, well, there wasn't a lot interesting happening, and it was more just kind of reciting, the lyrics. And, obviously they're doing it for the art of it rather than, trying to make something entertaining in those specific sections. So I understood that. But overall, I did enjoy the album.
Jason.
More like Fate snoring. Am I right?
Ooh, got him.
I don't even. I'm gonna probably agree more with Josh on this one, in the fact that while I didn't hate any of this, there's nothing in this album for me personally, and it has nothing to do with prog, because for me this is just like a slower, heavier, darker like metal album. But once you get past like song one or two, like it just feels like, and in this case, it's very difficult to score because it's just one song. It really is just one song. So my biggest criticism of it is the fact that making the band break it into parts and trying to grade it the way that I do, every song sounds exactly the same because it's just one song anyway. So there's like the notes that I have, it's hard to grade
Well,
anything
then if it's just one song, it should have been like super easy for you. You only had to grade one thing.
Except for the part where you got to come up with your top three and your what three would be cut, and so I went ahead and just did the way that I do it. But I was while I like I said, while I didn't hate this, this is nowhere near as terrible as the Extreme album. Uh, this is just music that I could put on in the background and not really listen to it and be absolutely fine. But just listening to it for pleasure, I just felt like it just felt like one really long song, and I just can't do that. I was disappointed. Ultimately, I was disappointed. Not by the musicianship or even the vocals or anything like that. It just
Just the way it was written.
yeah, that's just not me. Maybe I am stupid and I don't get it. But it was just a lot of the same from song to or part to part.
Well, not getting this album is not the only thing that makes you stupid. Who's your MVP for the record?
Well, I mean, I almost didn't want to give one because, in my opinion, everybody just kind of played their part for it from song to song. But a highlight that are in this album are from the guitarist, Jim Matheos. He was my MVP. There are some good riffs. There are some heavier sections that are just, yeah, kind of stink face a little bit. And to hear that he basically writes most of it, I didn't even know.
Yeah, he wrote the
So
entire record.
yeah, so I mean, MVP.
All right, Jonah, who you got?
I went actually with the vocalist Ray Alder. I really enjoyed the
So did I.
vocals. I really enjoyed the vocals. I think they do kind of make the album. His vocal melodies and his singing style, I think really fit with what they were trying to do, and it really clicked for me.
I don't
Yeah,
disagree.
yeah, I had Ray Alder as well. I mean, dude, like I think that's really the fun part of this list that we're doing right now is like vocally, every member of this group is fucking like tippy top in terms of like the vocals between like James LaBrie, um, Jeff Tate, Ray Alder. I can't remember the singer for Symphony X, but I mean, just all these singers are just top flight. I think for me, it almost feels like Ray Alder is like the lead guitar player for this album because like his moments and his melodies are the thing that really drove this album for me.
Russell Allen is for the Symphony
Russell
X.
Allen. Thank you.
No, I had Ray Alder as well. It's I didn't realize he didn't write the lyrics, or at least according to our notes. So that was interesting that Jim wrote all of that. But no, I agree with Jonah. And you, Josh. I do think that Ray does carry the songs, and because it's a concept record, and like because of the story, if you will, of the record, you kind of need that vocal performance to, because they do a lot of callbacks and repeating some of the lyrics in later parts of the song. And like I couldn't what I like about Ray Alder's vocals, not necessarily not just on this record, but just in general, is he's not a super big belter necessarily. He kind of has his own like smooth singing style. Like he's like a little bit on a lower register than some of the other guys on this same list. James LaBrie, I would say, is more of a belter. Same thing with Jeff Tate. But I do think Russell Allen and Ray Alder kind of counterbalance that with like a little bit of a lower register to their voice, and it's really easy to sing along to. But yeah, for me, he was really good. I do want to give a shout out, and I gotta be ignorant and look at my notes for a second. Joey Vera on the bass. There's some bass moments in some of these songs that are like hyper impressive. But also my boy Kevin Moore from Dream Theater albums Images and Words, and the second album he was on, Awake. He's super good on this, and I think the keyboards don't overpower the guitar work or anything. It's more of an accompaniment, and I think it works really well.
Yeah, and it's more just I don't know. I feel like the keyboards came through more and just like instead of being like this thing in other albums where it's like competing with the guitar, like it was just like good piano moments.
Yeah.
Dave, what'd you have for best riff?
So it's it's hard to do this because the songs don't have titles, and so it's harder to like remember. But I would be remiss not to mention like the opening main riff for part 3, which is like a very straight ahead banger. There's also and I believe it's towards the end of part. I'm gonna probably get this wrong, but it's either part 5 or 6. I want to say it's part 5. It's near the end where things kind of start picking up. It's not really a riff. It's just a series of a bunch of licks, and it kind of goes into this proggy moment to close out that part. That whole section is really, really good.
Is that 5 or 4?
It's 4 or 5. I don't recall. It
I
could
think
be.
that might be the end part 4.
You're probably right. And that's really really enjoyable. And man, I do think that even though both my highlights were there, I think the album is actually backloaded. I found myself like from basically parts like 6 on is like where I really really like started enjoying like the kind of the whole songs even more than the front part.
All right. You alluded to this when you said this is like the more straightforward riff, so that's what I went with. The main riff in part 3 with the harmonic in it. I mean, look, anytime you put that in a riff, I'm just a simp, and I'll take it. Jonah, what you got?
You're on mute.
You're muted.
Come on, noob.
Yeah, I know. Because I'm coughing over here. It's got to be part 6 for me. That bass riff is
I
super
think I know what you're
fat.
talking about.
It's like 50 seconds into the song. Yeah, no, it's so good. The tone on the bass and the effects that he's got going, it's just it sounds really really good. That was my number one for sure. It almost had like Tool vibes, except not as distorted and crunchy as Tool, but it was good. I dug it.
Dude, thank God it's not Tool. Jason, what you got?
I went deep cut again, but I want to give a little respite to there's a bridge section in part 5 piano. Absolutely fantastic. I love that
Yeah.
section. But I don't really call that a riff, so I wanted to highlight it. Mine's another deep cut. It's a short riff. It's a underlined riff. It's an ascending like style guitar riff on part 11. At the 45-second mark, it lasts only about 20 or 30 seconds long. I couldn't even tend to mouth it right now. But again, one of those little riffs that's kind of layered that I could just listen to like a whole song of.
Nice. All right. Hit us with your top tracks, Jason.
All right. Number 3, part 1. Solid open, very dark.
Part 1?
Yep.
Come on, bro.
Good solid open. Number 2 is part 9. Like
That's a
the
cool song.
acoustic sections. And number 1 for me had as far as my notes is the song that had the piano bridge. That's part 5.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jonah, what you got?
So because everything is kind of all just one piece of music, it was pretty difficult to decide. But just going off of like which parts of the parts were my favorite, for my third one, it's going to be part 5. I also love that piano interlude section in the middle. It sets the mood really good. My number 2 is going to be part 8. There's another piano part in that where the acoustic guitar comes in and they're like playing like, melodies and harmonies, and like it just sounds really really cool together. I loved that. And then my number 1 was part 6 because that bass riff is so good.
God, so funny. So many different options here. All right, for me, I got an honorable mention. Part 9. Like Jason said on that one, dude. That's just a cool song, like kind of laid back, but cool vibe to that one. Number 3 for me, part 7. Number 2 for me is part 2. Love the chorus on that. And then number 1, whatever I'm a booger moron, is part 3.
Yeah. Mine. My number 3 is part 4. Let me also just say, like I said, this album kind of ruins the way we review this because it's like all one song. But anyway, my number 3 is part 4. And then my number 2 and 1 are sort of combined because they're both very similar sections. It's part 5, and then the callback to part 5 is part 7. I love the lines like "Let nothing bleed into nothing" and "Do nothing." That's repeated across both of those parts. I just really like those lyrics are really good, and just the music surrounding them is really clean. But yeah, it's so weird to pick this. Also, I don't know if Josh had this planned on his end, but I didn't whittle this down to 8 tracks because I don't think that's possible with this personally.
It's definitely possible.
It is possible.
Well, then you guys go for the next part because I didn't do that.
You didn't do any of it?
Not on that part. How can you? This is one song. What are you gonna cut? It's a song.
Oh, easily. Let me give you what I would cut here. The worst part of the song, by a mile, should not be on the record is part 6. Part 6 is a travesty. It's appalling. Okay. Look, it's not that bad. Okay, but part 6 is the worst part of the album. Part 8 for me would be the next worst. Then part 10 would be the next worst for me.
The 2 instrumental parts.
Hey man, it is what it is. And then this was a hard cut. I would not cut this. Look, I wouldn't cut anything off the album. Okay, we're just doing the exercise here. But the hardest cut for me was part 1. Look, part 1 should not be a highlight. Grow up, Jason. Eat your vegetables, okay? But
I tried. This was like eating some shitty vegetable.
no, dude. But part 1 is cool. It's a good intro to the album. It's got a good little vocal melody about halfway through it. So I like part 1. But that was the hardest cut for me for sure. Jonah, what you got?
Pretty similar. If I had to cut, it would probably be the 2 instrumental tracks. Because because of the concept of the album, you kind of want the meat and potatoes, if you will, is the lyrics. Because it's a concept album. And then I would also cut track 1, for the same reasons. And then if I have to cut one more, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to say I would cut part of part 12 because the last 2 minutes is like fade to silence, and then that damn alarm clock.
Yeah. Well, so the alarm clock is supposed to signify waking up from a dream.
Right.
Yeah,
of course.
But everybody wakes up in the first 5 seconds and slams that fucking thing.
Yeah.
Also, give me your top 3.
Yeah.
I mean, not your top 3. I'm sorry. Give me your cut downs.
All right, I'm cutting part 4, snooze. I'm cutting part 8 because it sounds just like 5, 6, and 7. I'm cutting part 10 because of the annoying bouncing effects.
Yeah.
And part 12 simply because of the last 2.5 minutes of that song.
All right.
I hate you guys. Okay.
All right. Well, hey, we're moving on to the end of the show here. This is where we like to give our score for the album, and just give you some context on how we score this. For a lot of folks out there, a 7 would be an average score. But for us, an average score is a 5. So for anything 4.9 and below, we would give, that's various levels of we would not recommend this album. Anything 5 and above is various levels of we would recommend the album, and not that this album is going to be there, but if it's a 9 or a 10, that's like an all-time great record.
I don't like this unnecessary shade that you're giving this album.
Serious. So, Jason, why don't you give your score first? I feel like Dave's going to be the highest of us here, so we'll let him go.
There's no doubt.
All right. So, while I did not enjoy this album, I still ended up giving it a recommend. I do think that,
as you should.
I do think that this album is easy to listen to in the background. I think it's just fine if you have people over and it's playing in the background, because at some point you'll be like, what is this? This sounds pretty good. Because it is. It's easy on the ears. But at the same time, like, I can't, in good faith, give it a high score, because it's just, for me, just really boring. I gave it a 5.2.
God damn, y'all are fucking dumb. I hate my friends.
Go ahead, Jonah.
I didn't approach this album the way I normally do, where I rate the individual tracks. I did want to kind of give it a fair shot and rate the whole thing overall. And there were a lot of parts I enjoyed, a few parts I didn't enjoy as much, and one part in particular where I was just like, why? but I ended up landing at a 6.2. Definitely would recommend. I think it is a cool concept, and I think it's something that's definitely worth. I think you should definitely listen to it at least once or twice just to kind of get your head around it. But after that, I'm not so sure I would like jam this on a regular basis, if ever again.
All right. Well, look, I don't know why you guys are scoring this record so hard. I'm coming in at a 9.2.
Don't lie.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was just trying to make you feel better, Dave. Hey,
2.9, really.
Jonah is not just good looking; he's also hyper intelligent because this album is in fact a 6.2.
Oh wow!
No, it's not. So I really enjoyed this record a lot. This is an album that I would jam just randomly. I really, really enjoyed it. It's I think it's not legendary for me, but it is something that I could easily find myself just turning on, right? So
Dude, you're not going to put this in the eights. Stop it.
8.6 is where I landed on this record.
Shut up.
I think this record is great.
Do you have a cousin that was a guitar tech for this band somewhere down the line or something?
Dude, I just think this is a great album. I'm not saying it's like necessarily the easiest record to listen to because it is kind of a heavy content album, and you do need to make the choice to listen to it like from start to finish. You can't just pick a track. So that's not for everybody, but if you like prog, I think this is absolutely must listen material.
All right. What's our total score?
6.55. So this actually comes in higher than 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. And I think that's correct.
I would agree with that because I would. I think I.
I mean, no, you wouldn't, Jason, because you gave 6 Degrees a higher score than this. So
I think so. I mean, look, it's funny. It's funny that you reference that because I thought about 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence as well. Obviously, because
42-minute song or whatever is on there.
Right. And I at first I thought, man, why is Fates Warning straight trying to copy Dream Theater here? But Dream Theater's was 5 years after this, so actually it's Dream Theater copying them. But I thought Dream Theater's long song, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, I thought it was better than this one, personally.
Yeah, I don't even think
just in terms of that song versus this song. Yeah. But the rest of the album hurts it for me for 6 Degrees. But just the 42-minute song I think is better than this song.
Yeah, no, I disagree. But that's cool.
Really? So you think this 12-part song is better than the 42-minute song from Dream Theater?
Oh, absolutely.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah. And I like. Look, I this only scored 0.4 higher than 6 Degrees for me. So I mean, I don't think they're worlds apart.
Yeah.
But to your point, Josh, I think the first disc of that album hurts that because it's not. It's like you have these 5 or 6 random tracks, and while I love, we're talking about another record now. While I love the Glass Prison, I think the other tracks are whatever. Anyway, 6.55. That's still, I know that's criminally low, and I agree. But that's still on our scale. That's still a B tier score because it is impossible for us to agree on anything. So,
what else is around that on the list?
Let's see. So that's better than every hair metal album we reviewed. Good job, us.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's better than every new metal album we've reviewed thus far. Although I think that's going to change
until next week.
Yeah.
So
it's not better than the rock stuff. I'm just trying to poke around real quick. I mean, it's better than Seasons in the Abyss. It's right around what we scored Vulgar Display of Power. It's right around what we scored
that's a travesty.
Abigail.
That is a travesty.
Oh, Abigail. That's a good one.
Yeah. So I mean, it's got some good company, right? So.
All right. Well, hey, if you guys think we're good company, go ahead and hit that like, hit the subscribe. We're putting out weekly metal content right now. We got metal reactions, metal reviews, metal time machines, metal brackets, and all kinds of other cool shit. And hey, in the meantime, live long and prosper.
Take it easy, everybody.
Later.
Peace.